for Justice and Equality, they need to discuss the latest report of the Inspector of Prisons. Deputy Clare Daly.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And without any disrespect to the Minister who is here, I would like to reiterate the points made by the Ceann Comhairle on Tuesday, that it's regrettable when the departments do not furnish ministers to answer the issues from their department, and it is something that we need to address. But that said, I don't think the present Ministers of Justice will be able to answer the issues in any more clarity than the Minister who is here would, because much as we might have criticised Minister Shatter, I have to say he had a greater understanding and urgency of the need to reform our prison system than all of his predecessors and of the sitting minister as well. Now, this week saw the publication of the latest report by the Inspector of Prisons. I think the media sought to concentrate on his findings of the prison service being responsible, as he said, for the growth of criminal gangs in jail. But I mean, the first point I would say is that I think is somewhat sensationalist. While he did say that the prison service doesn't have a clear operational strategy for dealing with criminal gangs, I agree with the points made by the Prison Officers Association that to blame the staff for this is absolutely outrageous and disproportionate, because it is the case that the staff, through their representative organisations, have been highlighting this issue for a number of years. Time and again they've asked for gang leaders to be isolated, to be put into separate institutions and taken out of the general prison population. So I think that criticism was spun unfairly. But the reality is that this is one area where prisoners are exposed and vulnerable and not getting the type of support that they should be in our system. I think it is important to point out that staff in the prison service have seen their wages utterly decimated. The starting rates of pay for prison staff is minuscule at the moment, and austerity is not incidental in this issue. I think we can't look at the present report in isolation. 2 months ago, the Inspector of Prisons produced a separate report where he talked about the deaths of 2 prisoners in custody, 2 very vulnerable prisoners, where he highlighted that actually prison records were falsified by staff and that those prisoners were not given the care and attention that they were lawfully entitled to get. On top of that, we've had the revelations of phone recordings in the prisons as well between prisoners and their solicitors. And this, to me, shows a dysfunctionality in our prison system which the Minister, the real Minister for Justice, doesn't seem to be keen to address. And I want to particularly reference what's presently going on in Portlaoise, in the E Block in Portlaoise, where in the course of the summer prisoners there had to engage in protest action to highlight the Victorian prison conditions that exist there, squalid and unhygienic, and the failure of management to provide adequate medical cover or hygienic facilities there, which is resulting on a serious impact on prisoners' health. The practice of slopping out continues on a daily basis there. Cells are damp and leaking beyond repair, unventilated, freezing cold during the winter. Access to a doctor is limited to twice a week on 2 days, and on several occasions no doctor is available at all. Now, this is not good enough. It's a human rights issue, and a delegation of deputies have sought and requested permission to go down and visit Portlaoise, and our requests have been waiting a reply for months now. And I find that astounding. On a regular basis, we seek permission to go and visit people in Maghaberry, in Northern Ireland. We're granted that permission, no problem. And here in the south of Ireland, when we ask to go and look at the conditions in Portlaoise prison, our letters are not answered. We're told, oh, we'll consider it, but for months we're left waiting. I don't think this is good enough, and I think it's a very serious indictment of our society if we can't treat, in some ways, the most vulnerable of our citizens, or the most neglected or whatever, despised of our citizens, in an appropriate manner.
Thank you. On behalf of the Minister, who unfortunately cannot be here today, I would like to begin by thanking Deputy Daly for raising this important matter. The Inspector of Prisons, Judge Michael Riley, with the assistance of Professor Andrew Kyle, carried out an assessment of the current culture within the Irish Prison Service and the extent to which it facilitates or hinders the development of the service. The Inspector officially presented his report to the Minister for Justice and Equality, Mrs. Frances Fitzgerald, on Tuesday the 3rd of November. And on behalf of the Minister, I would like to take this opportunity once again to thank the Inspector and Professor Kyle for all of their hard work in bringing this report to fruition. This is the first time that an Inspector of Prisons who is independent of the government has embarked on this type of review into the prevailing culture of the Irish Prison Service. The Minister welcomes this report, which focuses on two key issues: the structure of the Irish Prison Service and the training and development of personnel. The report contains many recommendations and it seeks to provide a roadmap for the future. The report will make a positive contribution to the reforms already underway in the Irish Prison Service. As the Inspector said at the time of announcing this review, there have been positive developments in recent years. Much has been done to address the many issues which have adversely affected our prison system for decades. For example, and the Deputy mentioned this, slopping out is being eliminated. The modernisation of the accommodation wings in Mountjoy is now complete. The new Cork prison will be ready for occupation early in the new year. A significant redevelopment project for Limerick is planned. We are very well on our way to fulfilling the commitment in the current programme for government to end the practice of sending children to St Patrick's Institution, and we are currently examining options to improve the detention and rehabilitative systems for female offenders. But the Minister believes more can be done if we build on the investment already made by the government, management and staff of the Irish Prison Service at all levels. While highlighting challenges, I welcome the fact that the report also acknowledges the many positive aspects of the service, including the dedication of its staff. The report also expresses concerns regarding gang culture in our prisons. Earlier this week, Minister Fitzgerald joined the Garda Commissioner as she launched Operation Tor, a new anti-burglary and anti-crime strategy. This included a new targeted approach to disrupting criminal gangs, an effort backed by investment by government in both overtime and new high-powered vehicles. As Minister Fitzgerald said on Tuesday at the launch of the report, she believes that there should be no place for gangs operating in the community and no place for gangs culture in our prisons. The Minister has asked the Director General of the Irish Prison Service to provide her with a comprehensive response to the report's concerns in relation to gang culture in our prisons.
I would have to say that I think the speed of reform has slowed down since Minister Shatter exited the brief. I think it is the case that we need to look at this area and look at it very seriously. I mean, people who are in prison, to my mind, are citizens. In many ways, they're forgotten citizens, but we have to separate their behaviour from the human being. And deal with that issue appropriately. And the fact that reports issued in June said that 1 out of 10 of the youngest inmates are on restricted regimes with up to 23-hour lockup is not human rights compliant. The fact that there are hundreds of prisoners who've requested to be in isolation for their own protection is not an appropriate governance of our prison service. And I do think we need to step back and look at that. I mean, for example, we should be taking the opportunity when our citizens end up in our prisons to deal with their behaviour, to rehabilitate them to go back into society. And a way of doing that is to treat them humanely in that regard and dealing with the conditions that they live under, because prisons in that sense are their homes. And in that sense, while the Minister says slopping out has been reduced, and that is true, but the reality is that slopping out still exists in the E-wing of Portlaoise, for example. example. Conditions in that prison are horrendous in the sense of slabs of concrete falling off the walls in the showers, hitting prisoners, electric wires exposed in the shower area, giving a danger of electrocution. The doctor saying the possibility of Legionnaire's disease because of the Victorian conditions that exist there. This needs to be addressed, and I would ask the Minister to intervene with the prison service on behalf of the delegation of TDs cross-party who want to go down and visit Portlaoise and intervene to seek for us to do so. I think as well how we treat prisoners is important. For example, there is a Donegal citizen, Gerard McManus, whose case I've been dealing with since 2013, who has requested a transfer from Maghaberry prison into Portlaoise for family reasons, and the Irish Prison Service over a year ago told me they were dealing with his transfer, and yet they haven't dealt with it. This causes stress, isolation, pressure on prisoners, and is no way human rights compliant as far as I'm concerned. So I think we could do better. I agree with you that the Inspector of Prisons has done a great job in his reports, but actually what he's saying is we need to be doing a lot more, and I don't see enough evidence of it under this Minister.
Thank you, Deputy, and just like to acknowledge your knowledge of this subject and obviously your genuine interest in it. Again, I would like to say that the Inspector's report is far-reaching and is an important contribution to the reform of the criminal justice system, which the Deputy has acknowledged. Minister Fitzgerald and her officials would need time to consider it and how its recommendations might best be implemented. I should also mention that the report will inform the next Irish Prison Service 3-year strategic plan 2015 to 2018, which will focus on building relationships, rehabilitative measures, efforts to reduce reoffending, and the further development of penal policy to realise the vision of a safer community through excellence in a prison service built on respect for human dignity. Finally, the Minister mentioned at the launch that she intends to bring this report to Cabinet shortly, firstly for information and at a later stage for decisions to be made. But in the interim, the Minister wants to ensure that key stakeholders have a chance to reflect on the report and provide feedback.